before we dive into the dark, twisted, and occasionally, what the actual hell side of humanity. Here's a quick note from our imaginary legal team, which consists of a sleep-deprived parent, Google, and a stress ball named Greg. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. Yes. Both. It's just me, researching these cases like your overly invested ex creeping your socials, thoroughly, obsessively, and with just a hint of judgment. The opinions here are entirely my own and do not represent law enforcement, lawyers, doctors, or your cousin Karen who thinks she's a detective because she binged 4 crime docs and made a Pinterest board. Also, everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, even if the vibes are giving that, yep, they did it. And no, I'm not a licensed psychologist or a doctor, just someone with a brain full of psychology textbooks, way too much coffee, and disturbing level of curiosity. And sometimes, there's a handsome guy who's mostly here for the snacks and the dramatic one-liners. So do your own research. I'm here for insight, empathy, and storytelling. Full disclaimers in the episode description.
Hey guys, if you're new here, welcome to my little corner of chaos. I'm Rachel, and I host Crime Unleashed with frequent appearances from my husband and other brave souls I can rope in along the way. This is what I do at night instead of sleeping, like normal people. So, you bring the snacks, your blanket, and your favorite drink, and I'll open the case file. Let's jump in. She was 15. Hitchhiking towards someone who felt like home. She climbed into a van with a man who looked harmless enough. He was quiet, older, forgettable. Exactly the kind of man who doesn't set off alarms until it's too late. What happened next would shatter her world and leave her broken, bleeding, and alone at the bottom of a canyon. Her arms were severed. She was thrown off of a cliff. But did she survive? And if she did, what happens when the man who did this gets out and does it again? This isn't the story of a sweet old man. It's the story of a monster and the 15-year-old girl who was never supposed to live. Welcome to Crime Unleashed.
Before we start, a content trigger warning. This episode contains graphic descriptions of violence, sexual assault, and crimes involving minors and vulnerable individuals. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Please take care of yourself.
Mary Vincent was just 15 years old in 1978. She was a beautiful, spirited teenager who loved dancing, really loved it. She had already worked front stage at Lido de Paris in Las Vegas and even performed in places like Australia and Hawaii. That's the kind of talent she had. Her future, it was bright. She was one of those kids who, you just knew was going somewhere. But then life happened. Mary's parents were going through a divorce, and listen, divorce can be hard, especially for kids. It shakes up your sense of normalcy or control, even when the divorce is necessary. And sometimes it is necessary. If two people aren't a good fit anymore, if staying together does not, if it does more damage than good, then separation can be the healthiest decision for everyone involved. But that doesn't mean it's easy on the children. It hits everyone differently, and for Mary, it made her feel like she had to get away, just breathe, just think. So she ran. She stayed in the Bay Area for a while, living on the streets, homeless, alone, 15, just trying to stay alive, survive. And eventually, the loneliness got to her. She didn't want to go back to her parents yet, but she did want family. She wanted someone familiar, someone who felt safe. So she made the decision to go visit her grandfather in Los Angeles. Now, in 1978, hitchhiking, it's common. It was very normal. It didn't carry the kind of danger we associate, with it today. Back then, people stuck out their thumbs, and drivers picked them up. Simple as that. The fear that we know now, the kind of, that tightens your chest when you think of a teenager, a teenage girl stepping into a stranger's van, that wasn't how people thought back then. But today, we know better, and we know why. Mary wasn't alone that day when she was deciding to go, travel to Los Angeles, hitchhike to Los Angeles. She was actually with a few people, 2 other guys who were also looking for a ride. They were just kids trying to get somewhere any way they could. And it does have this in a lot of articles. Some articles don't mention that, but I'm going to go with it because it does have it in a few. But a blue van pulled up and rolled to a stop beside them. Now, behind the wheel sat Lawrence Singleton. To Mary, he looked harmless. He was an older man, probably in his 50s. He said he was a former merchant marine. Nothing intimidating about him. He looked like a grandpa. He looked like the kind of man who might be someone's quiet uncle, or maybe even a neighbor's retired dad. Definitely not someone who, sent alarm bells. But again, to this day, it probably would have. I've told you, if you listen to any of my other podcasts, I tell my kids every day, be on the lookout, always keep your head up, and do not trust anybody. Don't even talk to strangers, period. But evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a ride in a blue van. So Singleton said that he could only take one of them. So he offered to drive Mary to Interstate 5, and she accepted. Now, according to several reports, those 2 guys that she was standing with, they told her not to get in with him. Something about him didn't set right with them, and Mary later admitted that she felt it too. There were red flags, but she was tired. She'd been living pretty rough, and she just wanted to see her grandpa, so she brushed it off. In an interview years later, Mary had said, quote, "I should have listened to them," end quote. But in that moment, she just got into the van. She was tired. For a while, everything seemed just fine. Singleton drove in the right direction down through the Bay Area towards Interstate 5 and onward towards Southern California. Mary felt a little more relaxed. The road was familiar and he seemed okay. She started to feel like maybe this wasn't a mistake. At one point, she sneezed, and Singleton, he reached over and touched her neck, asking if she was sick. Mary recoiled and instinctively felt uncomfortable, but she didn't panic. Eventually, she actually fell asleep. When she woke up, though, everything had changed. They had passed the turnoff. They weren't headed where they should be, and she knew it immediately. She grabbed a pointed surveyor stick from beside her seat and demanded he turn around. Singleton, with practiced calm, claimed it was a mistake, that they were just lost. He apologized, said he'd turn back, and he did. Or at least that's what it looked like. Mary believed him. He acted remorseful, seemed like maybe he was just a confused old man. So she stayed. But then he pulled over again, this time in a remote area. Said he had to use the bathroom. No big deal, right? Except this time Mary's gut was screaming. She felt it. Something was wrong. She stepped out of the van and bent down to tie her shoes, getting ready to run. But she never got the chance. Before she could move, Singleton came up behind her and swung a sledgehammer. A sledgehammer straight into her skull. She collapsed, unconscious, skull fractured, bleeding, barely alive. He dragged her into the back of his van and tied her hands. What happened next is hard to say out loud, but it's part of her truth, and it matters. Throughout the night, Lauren Singleton attacked her brutally. He assaulted Mary, threatening her life the entire time. He told her not to scream. If she wanted to live, she had to obey him. Taking everything he could, I can't and don't want to imagine being 15 years old, tied up in the back of a stranger's van and hearing those words and dealing and being with this person. He eventually untied her hands, only to hand her a plastic jug filled with some kind of alcohol and force her to drink it before they continued on the road and he continued his attack. This wasn't about impulse. This man was taking his time, thinking, calculating, driving, coming back, making choices. Singleton drove around assaulting her whenever he felt like it. And later, he brought the van to a stop on the side of the road. He ordered Mary to lie down near the edge of the road. She pleaded with him, begged him to let her go. But all he said was, quote, "You want to be free? I'll set you free," end quote. And then, with a hatchet, Singleton severed both of her arms. He severed both of Mary's arms just below the elbows while she was alive. 4 inches below her right, 6 inches below her left. Not once, but twice. Her body just felt like it didn't belong to her anymore. The pain must have been indescribable, but in that moment, pain likely gave way to something else. Shock. That dissociative, out-of-body state the brain enters when it's trying to survive something it can't comprehend. Psychologists often describe it as a brain's emergency exit, when you can't run, you can't fight, and your mind's stepped away to protect you. She later said it felt like her spirit had left her body. Mary wasn't just hurt, she was being erased, piece by piece. Her identity as a dancer, a daughter, a teenager was being stolen by the hands of a man who saw her as disposable, and he treated her that way. Singleton dragged her like garbage to the end of the road. He tossed her naked, bleeding body into a ravine, like she was nothing, like she wasn't 15 years old, like she didn't matter. Now, some reports say that it was a drainage pipe or something else, but it doesn't matter. What matters is she landed at the bottom, broken, bleeding, and alone. And he left. No hesitation, no turning back. As far as he was concerned, Mary Vincent was already dead. But Mary didn't die. She was unconscious for a while. Her skull had been fractured by the sledgehammer earlier. Her arms were gone, her blood soaked deep into the dirt beneath her. And it was cold, an early morning desert cold. And the canyon around her was silent. But she wasn't dead, but she was very close. Now, here's what most people don't understand. The body may shut down, but the mind, it starts reaching for anything it can to survive. So even as blood poured from her wounds, even as the darkness closed in, Mary's brain was doing what it was built to do: stay alive. Now, in an interview, she would later describe yelling at God, quote, "I was talking to God the whole time when I was awake. Actually, I was screaming at him, saying, 'Please, let me go to sleep. I will deal with this tomorrow,'" end quote. She was bargaining. That's what trauma would sound like. Not just pain, but resistance. She wasn't done yet. Her body may have been betrayed, but her will was still fighting. She just didn't know it quite yet. But she didn't go to sleep. Because somewhere in the back of her mind, at 15 years old, Mary Vincent knew she had to get up. That if she didn't move, she was going to die. So, she did the unthinkable. She stuffed what was left of her arms into the dirt and mud to stop the bleeding. She later said that someone had told her once that if you are bleeding and cannot cauterize it, you pack the wound with dirt until the blood congeals. That stuck with her, and that probably saved her life. So she got up, broken ribs, no arms, naked, drenched in blood, and she climbed out of that ravine, a 30-foot ravine. She doesn't even remember how she did it, but she did. She thinks she kept her arms raised in the air to slow the blood loss, but she cannot remember. Her body moved on pure instinct and survival. And then she stood on the edge of a desolate road, alone, maimed, 15. She stood. At one point she saw headlights. Salvation. No. The car sped past her, and in some articles it says the car came up close and turned around and left. Either way, it sucks. Imagine that moment. You're standing there looking like a horror film come to life, and I'm not saying that in a rude way. Imagine what you might look like, and that one car that could save you drives right past. I cannot imagine the desperation she must have felt. But then, another set of headlights. A couple on their honeymoon, or vacation, depending on the version you hear. They had taken a wrong turn, and thank the Lord for that. They wrapped Mary in what they could, kept her conscious, and rushed to get help. Again, there's so many articles, and there's so many different articles with different reports. So some reports say that they drove to the hospital, and others say that they actually took her to the airport and used the phone at the airport to call an ambulance. Either way, they saved her life. Mary was rushed to the hospital, and even with everything she had endured, she gave a full description to police. She couldn't give them his name, but she remembered the van, she remembered his face, she remembered everything else. And that was enough. The sketch was that good, though. 10 days after Mary gave her statement, a drawing was released to the public. And it looked so much like the real thing that the Singleton's neighbor in Nevada recognized him and called the police. They didn't hesitate. Singleton was arrested at his second home, which infuriates me. I don't care what the second home looks like. It just makes me mad. Just 6 months after that unthinkable night, he was in court, facing a jury and a list of charges that honestly should have guaranteed that he never saw daylight again. Kidnapping, mayhem, which that's the legal term for causing a permanent and disfiguring injury, attempted murder, sexual assault, sodomy, and forced oral copulation. There was quite a bit. And still, he only got 14 years. That was the maximum sentence allowed under California law at that time. 14 years. Mary, just 16 by then, testified against him in court, faced him again, showed strength most adults can't even fake. And as she stepped down from the witness stand, Singleton leaned in and said, quote, "I'll finish this job if it takes me the rest of my life," end quote. That is scary, especially since he only got 14 years. And if anybody knows about the legal system, he's not going to get 14 years. He's not going to be there 14 years. So, at first, she said that she wasn't scared. She wasn't afraid. She was focused on getting justice. But the trauma catches up to you. The fear sneaks in later, when the pain dulls and the adrenaline fades. And with a comment like that echoing in her mind, how could she not live in fear? Honestly, most people would expect a man who sexual assault, raped, and mutilated a teenager to stay behind bars forever. Even the judge agreed. He said, Quote, "If I had the power, I'd send him to prison for the rest of his natural life," end quote. But the legal system didn't care about Mary. It didn't care about justice. And after serving just 8 years and 4 months, Singleton was granted parole for, quote, "good behavior." Let that sink in. Now here's something else to point out or think about. And honestly, it shouldn't have been possible for him to get out of prison. According to Morbidology, their article or their blog, it says Singleton's psychiatric evaluation before release stated, quote, because he is so out of touch with his hostility and anger, he remains an elevated threat to others' safety inside and outside prison," end quote. Let me translate that. This guy is still dangerous as hell, but we're letting him out anyway. On top of that, it was reported that while in prison, Singleton wrote threatening letters to Mary's attorney because why not? Terror doesn't have to end just because someone's behind bars, right? So, when Mary found out that he was getting out, she did what any survivor would do. She got out. She moved her entire family from California to Gig Harbor, Washington in 1987, and she started over, as far away from him as she thought was possible, and she changed her name and moved across state lines and just started over. She eventually settled in that Pacific Northwest, raising her 2 sons and keeping a low profile for her safety and theirs. She avoided the public eye for many, many years. But Singleton, he went back to California. But no one, and I mean no one there, wanted him. Not in their community. Authorities tried to house him in various cities, but public outrage shut it down every time. At one point, they tried placing him across from Concord City Hall, but the protests got so intense, hundreds of people surrounded the building. They had to pull him out wearing a bulletproof vest. Eventually, California's governor stepped in, and Singleton was forced to live in a trailer on the grounds of San Quentin Prison for the duration of his parole. That's how hated this man was. That's how dangerous the public knew he was. The system didn't see it, apparently, but the people did. And they were right. The outrage sparked change. In 1987, fueled by Mary's advocacy, California passed the Singleton Bill, which I find amazing. It's a law that prevented the early release of criminals who committed crimes involving torture. It carried a 25 to life sentence minimum. And I know it was too late for Mary, but I absolutely love that she did this. She did it for so many, many people out there. Now, Singleton moved back to Florida after his parole. And in 1997, the police received a call from a neighbor in Sulphur Springs who reported a disturbance. When they arrived, they found Roxanne Hayes, a mother of 3, stabbed to death in Singleton's home. Another life taken, another mother gone, all because the system gave this man another chance he never should have had. Despite her fear, Mary traveled from California to Tampa to testify at Singleton's sentencing. She stood in the courtroom once again and described what he did to her, the physical toll, the psychological trauma, the fear that never really left, and obviously everything else that included with that. And this time, the jury listened. On February 20th, 1998, Singleton was found guilty of first-degree murder, and on April 14th, he was sentenced to death. He didn't make it to execution, though. 3 years later, Singleton died in 2001 of cancer while incarcerated at North Florida Reception Center. Mary Vincent didn't just survive a nightmare, she walked out of it, bleeding, broken, and determined. After the attack in 1978, she spent weeks in the hospital recovering. Surgeons were able to save her life, but both arms had been severed just below the elbows, so there was nothing that they could do for that. She was, however, fitted with prosthetic arms and underwent extensive physical rehab. In her adult years, Mary became an artist, using her own prosthetics to draw and paint, which I find amazing. She poured her emotions and trauma into her artwork, creating powerful visual pieces that told her story when words weren't enough. Eventually, she began to speak publicly again, slowly, cautiously sharing her story with audiences not for shock, but to inspire strength, survival, and change. She's made appearances at victim advocacy events, school assemblies, and self defense workshops. Mary never became a headline chaser. She never glamorized her trauma. She just lived. She raised her boys, she created art, she rebuilt her body and her identity from the ground up. And most of all, she kept going. Now, I want to mention this next piece as well, because it's really important to me. Roxanne Hayes worked the street to support her children. She did sacrifice her own safety to make sure that their basic needs were met. And according to Clifford Tyson, her longtime partner, quote, "These kids came first." That one line says everything about who she was. Intelligence and care defined their little family. Roxanne had a stable morning routine with her kids. She always made sure to say goodbye to her kids, say good morning to her kids, and just be there. People say that she was devoted to her kids and their well-being, no matter what it took. The trauma of her murder devastated all three of her children. Clifton Tyson, just 7 years old at the time. Malachi Tyson, only 3. And Akina, aged 11, which was her daughter. And this part is almost too much to say. Clifton was called to identify his mother's body, 7 years old. And I do not understand why it was Clifton at 7 years old and why it wasn't Clifford, who was her longtime partner. I do not understand that. But that loss didn't just leave a hole, it removed the only steady caregiver they'd ever known. And I want to say this as clearly as possible. Roxanne Hayes wasn't just a victim, she was a mother. Clifton, Malachi, Akina, they were her world. And it might not be the first choice or the choice you would make as far as her work, but she didn't go to the streets because she gave up. She went because she was trying to give them something better, a future. She never imagined she'd pay for that sacrifice with her life. Singleton didn't just take her. He shattered the children's world. And for a 7-year-old boy to walk into a morgue and identify his mother, that's not just a crime story. That's a shattered childhood to me. And I just wanted to mention it because I feel it's just as important. They are all just as important. But, all right. I know that was a hard one, but questions to my favorite people. Should someone who mutilates and or does what they did or what he did to Mary or to any other child, should they ever get out of prison? And if so, how long do you think they should have? Number 2, why do you think some people still believe in giving them another chance? And do you feel that they deserve another chance? And the last one, in this day and age and what we see everywhere, if you passed a girl on the road that might have looked like Mary, what would you have done? For me, I would like to think, I would have to be in that situation, of course. If it was just me and my kids, I would have to really know what was going on. And in this case, it was dark. If it was just me, I want to say that I would absolutely pick her up. When I say that, if my kids are with me and it's dark and I really can't see what's going on, that's for me, that's really hard because I do not want to ever put my kids in danger. So it makes me sad to say that, but I would absolutely call the cops. I would absolutely wait even outside till somebody showed up, or I don't know. I don't really know. but I would like to think that I would help her if I knew the situation or if I knew what was going on a little bit better. It's hard to say without going through it, but I would like to hear what you guys think on all of that. I'm excited to read it, but thank you for being here, and I hope to see you next week with another true and bizarre crime